Welcome to the FarrCast, providing you insight into Wall Street, Washington, and the world. And now here's your host, Michael Farr.
Welcome to the FarrCast. I am Michael Farr. Thanks so much for joining us again this week. It is the 26th day of June. Half of 2025 is just about over here, folks. Second quarter coming to an end. It feels like we've had a good 3 years here in the first 6 months of 2025. We've had all of the ups and downs of tariffs and liberation days and attacking Israel and throwing the Ukrainian president out of the White House and on and on and on. And I'm exhausted. I don't know about y'all, but I'm just exhausted. And if you look at markets and you look at levels in stocks, meh. Okay, they're a little higher. We've got near all-time highs on the S&P 500. Stock market's done well. 427 on the 10-year Treasury. Inflation is not gone away, but it's not awful. The consumer is still hanging in. Unemployment is still low. And please, save your cards and letters on this one, folks. The economy is still doing fine. Do I love the way it's going? No, but it's still doing fine. I don't know why that's so offensive to so many people when I say that the economy's doing fine. I'm sorry. Some people are offended if when I was a baseball umpire and I would call a strike against their team. Now, if the ball was over the plate and hit that strike zone, I called a strike, or I did my best to call a strike. I wasn't a very good umpire, I promise. I really wasn't very good at it. But that's when you call a strike. And sometimes the team at bat would be upset. So, fine. But that's still what you've got to do. So, where are we? I think I'm just calling a strike. The economy is okay. We can't keep adding debt at $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion a year and think that it's going to be just perfectly fine. It's not. We're already borrowing money to pay interest on the damn debt. That's stupid. Everybody knows it's stupid. Why won't we do something about it? Why? Because it hasn't hurt us so far. Nothing's gone wrong so far. We've gotten away with it each and every day. Ask any high school boy if you can drink and drive at the same time, and if he's never been caught, he's going to say yes. If he's never wrecked a car, he's going to say, yes, I can drink and drive. I'm different. This is okay. Folks, you know that I'm right. So, when you look at the long term, we still believe that the long term works out because sooner or later somebody's going to do something responsible. But boy, it's getting a little long in the tooth here, folks. What do you do when markets are trading at all-time highs and we know that we've got a lot of volatility that's going to continue to come from the political arena? You look at fundamentals and you know what you own and you make sure that you're well positioned for the long term. And if you need cash for your expenses in the next 6 or 12 months, you make damn sure you've set it aside, particularly at market highs. You have the cash reserves you need to get through and endure. So one of my new questions for our investment folks is, what would you do and what should you do? If I give you $1 million today, it's invested in your own name. Will you invest it? Will you hang on to it? What are you going to do with it? We're going to start. Slate Stone, Chief Market Strategist, the great, the one, the only, the famous or infamous, depending on how well you know him, Kenny Polcari, certainly older than I. Welcome back, Kenny.
Mike, it's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much. And trust me, I can absolutely understand your analogy about you're going to ask a high school kid, should he drink and drive? It clearly depends if you got in an accident or not when you were in high school and you did that.
Yeah, right. I mean, we all know, when you hear these embezzlement things and you hear that this guy or that woman was just caught cheating on their spouse, right. Everybody with any life experience will tell you it wasn't the first time. Nobody freaking gets caught the first time. Right. So seeing evidence of a habit, and I think the markets have a habit. The markets have an addiction to Fed money and a belief that the Federal Reserve can bail us out of any sort of emotional crisis and tantrum that the markets throw. And at some point, you and I know that ain't the truth. So tell us, Kenny, tell us the way it is, brother. Tell us.
So listen, I think and I put this in my note this morning. We had this dramatic sell-off. We had a dramatic reversal, but I think the market feels a little bit tired right here, which doesn't mean you bail. It just means you be a little bit more patient with your investments. You be a little bit more patient in terms of where you think the market is going. Do I think the market's going to end higher by the end of the year? I do. But I think that, it's tired right now. So a pullback would not surprise me at all. And so I think you have to play your cards that way. Don't go chasing things. To your point, if you had $1 million now, if you handed me $1 million now, what would I do with it? I would do exactly what I'm doing with it at the moment. I would take my time. I'd feather it in. I'd have a well-balanced and diversified account. But I wouldn't do it all. I wouldn't take the $1 million today and put it all to work. Absolutely not. I'd feather it in over a period of time, whether it be 6 months or 8 months. And I would take my time and watch how the economy developed, what's going on with the Fed, what's going on with interest rates, because that's all going to make a difference in how you allocate it. But look, it's also going to make a difference on where you are in the life cycle. If I'm 30 years old and you give me $1 million, my risk, I'm going to be way further out in the risk scale. But if I'm 60 years old and you give me $1 million, I'm going to be much more balanced.
As a money manager, Kenny, we have studied this at Farr Miller in Washington, and we have looked at dollar cost averaging over a year versus going all in day one and investing. And there's really no predictive difference over time. Yes, sometimes you're going to get it wrong, but your feelings don't help you a whole lot. I feel that the market's very expensive. I feel that the market's high. I can look at my metrics and I should still say, all right, even in this sort of a market, I should be able to find things that are undervalued and at least put some of my money to work. That's what a disciplined investor does. On the other hand, $1 million is a lot of money. It's nice to have $1 million in cash sitting there generating a little bit of money for you every year. If you can make $40,000 sitting in money market with your $1 million sitting in cash while you wait for whatever gyrations to occur, that never feels awful. So
that's right.
But what you need to do too is come up with a discipline and come up with a plan. What happens if the market's still here a year from now and you were wrong? What happens if it's higher? What are you going to do? This is when you talk to the financial professional, but I'm telling you, as a financial professional, almost 40 years here, there aren't clear answers, which is why you have this discipline and you have to stick with this discipline. Kenny, if you look at positions in your accounts when the market's trading at all-time highs, you're coming into a summer, you've got military conflicts, you've got the president now coming out more loudly against the head of the Federal Reserve, which I think is much more serious than any military conflict you want to mention. This you don't go after, Mr. President, do not go after the Federal Reserve. I don't care who the chairman of the Federal Reserve is. The independence of the Federal Reserve is absolutely essential to the U.S. economy and health of it. And by the way, why would you let those people on Capitol Hill that have screwed up the rest of the debt in the economy get anywhere near monetary policy? It sounds wonky, but you don't want to do that. Kenny, am I wrong? You agree?
No, 100% I agree that they shouldn't, right? And the president should stay away. But
stay away, Mr. President.
He should stay away. He should stay in his own lane. I agree with you. But this president, and look, every president wants lower rates. They do. Who's kidding who? They all want the Fed to keep rates low during the presidency, and I get that.
Cats want catnip.
I hear you, but there are times when that just is not possible. Now,
alcoholics want to drink. I mean, there are a lot of. I mean, we could do that for an hour, right? I mean, come on.
Easily, President. But I will say there are times when the Fed needs to really hold the line, which I think he has done. But I also think there are times to consider when you really do need to change. And I'm getting to the sense that I do think that is the time to reconsider. Do I think they should slash rates by 100 basis points? Absolutely not, because that's what Trump said yesterday, that he wants to slash them by 100 basis points. I think that's reckless. But do I think that at the next meeting we could consider a rate cut? I think we could. And I think that's going to be the narrative. I think he's going to come around to that. And if that's the case, then I think you have to consider still putting money to work. Look, the market rallied the last couple of days, yes, on the Iranian conflict, yes, on the geopolitical conflict, but also on the idea that rates may now start to come down sooner than, say, September or October, which is where the market was pricing it in.
So this is a game that everybody can play. Should the Fed ease? Should the Fed ease? Is
Right.
monetary policy right? That doesn't matter.
Right. Doesn't matter.
We've got very good, and promise, Ken Polcari and I have pretty good informed opinions about this stuff. We'll be close to correct somewhere in here. I disagree with Kenny. I think they need to wait because I think they do need to see whether tariffs are going to cause inflation if it's going to show up in the data. I think you're going to have clearer answers by September to that, which is why you're going to wait for now. I think Powell's doing the right thing. I think they need to.
So I was in the camp, and I was in the camp that we shouldn't have any rate cuts at all, exactly for that reason. But what I'm sensing is happening now, because look what happened after the latest FOMC meeting. He came out, he said they're holding rates steady. There was this big uproar. Now you're starting to have members of the Fed themselves come out and challenge him. You had it with Waller, you had it with Bowman, you had it with Goolsbee, you had it with Bostic. They're all now challenging him out loud, which just means to me, whether I think it's right or not, it just means to me that they're going to start pushing for that cut. Right?
Whether you're right or not, whether I'm right or not, the Fed, the president and the executive branch and the other branches of government have to leave the Fed the hell alone. They'll make a mistake. They'll get it right. They'll get it wrong. We can criticize them, but we have to leave the Fed independent without political influence and persuasion. Okay, now I want to get back to the portfolio quickly, and then we're going to go because I know you've got to go, and I got Mahaffee waiting here, and we got to hear from him. So if you look through your portfolio here, Kenny, and you say, I've had some stocks that have performed really well. The positions are large. Markets are near all-time highs. Do you take the opportunity to rebalance? And then I've got a more important question, Kenny. What do you do with those stocks that really haven't performed, that you liked the fundamentals? They feel like they're just taking up space in your portfolio. They haven't done anything, or maybe they were falling and they continued to fall, and the valuations are even better when you bought them, but you're sick of them in the markets at all-time highs. So start with the ones that might be too big positions, or
right. The ones that become a bigger position in the portfolio because they performed well, you should trim. Nothing's wrong with trimming. That's risk management. So you should do it. That doesn't mean you blow out the whole position, but you trim around the edges and take some of that risk off the table, right? That's perfect risk management, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, on the other side, if you've got names that you did the research on, you did the due diligence on, you like the thesis, but the stock has yet to perform, I don't view that as a negative. As long as the thesis has not changed, then it's just lagging. And I think that's an opportunity, especially if it's traded down a little bit, but I still believe in the thesis. I think it's an opportunity to put more money to work. Now, if the story changes or the thesis changes, no, then you got to reconsider blowing it out completely. But if it hasn't, and it's just lagging, I think that's where the opportunity is.
That's exactly the right answer. It's exactly correct. It's absolutely textbook. You bought it for fundamental reasons. Just because they haven't panned out in the current market environment doesn't mean that they won't. You buy on fundamentals, and fundamentals will come through over time, folks. They do bear out. Earnings growth is the most significant indicator of stock price performance over time. Over time, you've got to let that increased earnings drive that stock price performance, and it might not be on your schedule. You might have to wait, but you give it enough time, and if they keep raising their earnings, that stock price goes up over time. So emotional decisions will kill you, and a discipline will save you. And listen to what we said too about what would you do, what should you do, because even professionals struggle to make sure we get back to our discipline when markets are making new highs and new lows. What's the main rule? Buy low, sell high. No. This ain't low, folks. Be careful out there. Be careful out there.
Right.
Kenny Polcari, I know your dad's in the hospital, and please know, ladies and gentlemen, say a quick prayer for Kenny's father and his family, will you please? Great friend of our show and a great American, Kenny's father. So he's in our prayers, and so are you, Kenny. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll be back with Mahaffee So much to talk about with Iran and still Ukraine. And is China going to weigh in to keep the Straits of Hormuz open? I think maybe so. We'll see what Mahaffee says next on the FarrCast.
Thanks for being with us this week. Now it's time to go to our political analyst, Dan Mahaffee, and your host, Michael Farr.
Welcome back to the FarrCast. Dan Mahaffee is the president of the Dr. Scholl Foundation, a scholar at the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress, a Washington, D.C. think tank, and the senior political analyst on the FarrCast, now in Season 8. Coming to the end of Season 8. Hard to believe. Dan, welcome back.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning.
Good morning. Here you're going to Boston today from Chicago. We appreciate you fitting us in. Dan, we got a great report from the initial attacks in Iran. Then it was walked back. Now it seems like the administration's doing what it can to walk it forward again. Who do we believe about the efficacy of these bunker buster bombs in Iran, and did they destroy the nuclear capacity of capacity production?
Good question, Michael. And let's answer this by breaking down, if you, me, a listener, was going to want to build a nuclear program, you need to break it down basically into three parts: materials, mechanism, and delivery. Big part of what we went after were the materials. And Michael, we were talking about this for weeks. Look, when it's being talked about on the FarrCast, it's hardly a state secret. So the materials.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. The FarrCast has uncovered. Have you seen the talks about ethane all over CNBC 3 weeks after Terrell Owen told us about the issue and how a Pyrrhic trade war was happening at the expense of the energy industry in the U.S.? That was 3 weeks before. I take exception to that. When Mahaffee talks, you're learning something here, folks, and I learn it too, and we're ahead of the game.
Well, then the Iranians listened to us and likely moved a lot of uranium away from the sites that were going to be hit. So that's the materials question. Where are those? Where are the materials? Now, in terms of mechanism.
So wait a minute, did they move them away from the sites?
Well, that's what we've seen on the publicly available satellite photos in the days before these attacks. You see trucks outside. This is a question that a lot of people are openly talking about, analysts, others, academics on weapons programs. They're saying they likely moved a lot of the material to other places. The IAEA also says the international regulators, they don't know the location, so the materials have been moved. Now, mechanism, on the other hand, no, we get to that. So materials we've covered. Mechanism, the actual bomb itself, that know-how is there. They probably have it. Were they close to assembling it? Certainly. On the other hand, the Israelis have bombed a lot of the scientists responsible for that, and the facilities where they could do that. Gone. And then finally, you have the question of delivery. And that's what you've seen. One, that by and large, these defense systems were able to stop the Iranian missiles. And two, that the Israelis were able to find and destroy most Iranian ballistic missile launchers. I'll caveat that with there's still belief that quite a few of the Iranian buried mountain missile silos were not used in this conflict, still remain hidden. And there would still be some missile silos that the Iranians don't have. So from a standpoint of looking at right now, yes, the Iranian program is significantly disrupted in all three areas, but we cannot account for where those materials are, at least in the publicly verifiable information.
So the world is indeed a safer place for now until they figure out where to start putting this stuff together again. And how long will it take them to have the facility to begin to reassemble this stuff?
Well, that's a good question. One, are there facilities we don't know about that existed in backup or contingency long before that? That would accelerate their ability to get to this. But if you look at what's being said by multiple sources, you put that anywhere between 18 months to 3 years of an extended timeline. That said, have we either A, incentivized the Iranians to go faster, to, now move quicker to develop that weapon as a deterrent, given that they've seen the experience they've just had? Or alternatively, do they understand perhaps that there's danger in going ahead? And I think this is what they're hoping in the White House, that we don't want to get this bombed again, and it's better to go to the negotiating table and sit down with the Americans. Ultimately, and this is where I don't think we can speak too much more about this, because frankly, I think this comes down to the 6 inches between the Ayatollah's ears when he emerges from his bunker and looks at what his country has become, and the questions he starts to hear from a lot of his inner circle, who realize, one, that the previous inner circle is mostly dead, and two, that the new inner circle is going to be wondering, how is he going to protect them from the Israelis if this happens again?
And what are the answers to that, Dan? I think those are very good questions. What is Iran thinking when they look around this morning and go, oh crap, we don't have the same means to fight back? And actually, give me a percentage there in terms of the Iranian military weaponry and everything else. Are they at 70% of where they were, or are they at?
Good question, Michael. I think that battle damage assessment is still ongoing, but again, as I said, at least of what is concerned to me, a significant number of those hidden missile silos still remain unaccounted for and likely untouched, at least in estimation. So that threat does still exist. But when you look at what the Iranian, if I'm an Iranian elite, as it were, right now, I would be asking, look at all the resources we've put into the nuclear program, the military, internal security, and confrontation with the West, and look how just in the matter of 12 days that's been destroyed and set back so easily. And what are we getting for this isolation? What are we getting for it? Now, they may not renounce the religious ideology. We're not going to expect them to suddenly turn into Jeffersonian Democrats overnight. But there are going to be those within the Ayatollah's inner circle who wonder what they've accomplished by this. On the other hand, there will be others who sit across from that same table who say, now is the time to find how we can get our revenge as quickly as possible. And that's that cycle. I think if you want to say anything about what I think President Trump is trying to do, and if I have to give him some credit, when he had that epithet on the lawn, speaking to reporters, saying they don't know what the blank they're doing, I think he wants to get them out of that cycle of just rushing and waiting to retaliate again. So if there is a chance to, at least get to the negotiating table, he has opened that. But again, maybe they have been fighting for so long that they don't know what the blank they're doing.
There's a point, Dan, in all of these, in every country around the world and in every society around the world, where the zealotry and political punditry and positioning and passion for positions changes when devastation occurs to a certain extent, and it changes to, wait a minute, is it bad enough that I'm going to lose my luxury condo and Mercedes? I mean, I had my political position. I felt very strongly about what we needed to do with the infidels, but no, wait. I might lose my condo and Mercedes? Now, that's a whole different, that happens. That happens when any conflict gets too severe. Are we close to that point with those inner circles where the oligarchs in Russia are starting to question Putin, if they are there yet, to say, whoa, that was my luxury yacht they just impounded. That's going to hurt my vacation in Cyprus. Maybe this guy's not, going to take care of my best life and interests here.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question, and if it does segue in a way that, if you want to compare and contrast, in Russia, the regime has done a very good job of ensuring that your future depends on the regime. In Iran, just now, we've seen that your life is endangered by proximity to this regime. So, is there going to be a pressure to change that? Maybe. That's one of those things, Michael, where I will at least say, and I defer, as a China expert, I defer to Iran experts on this. And right now, if I spoke to five Iran experts, I get five answers.
Yep.
So I think we have to see how this unfolds over the coming days. But remarkably, what I think you at least have seen from both sides is an acknowledgement that any disruption to energy would be self-defeating for both sides.
I'm
Uh,
hearing two other things, Dan, from
yeah.
sort of from the right wing, but I also talked to a former Army Ranger officer, very elite fighter, yesterday, now retired, almost 40 years old. And the two opinions I'm hearing are one, uh, the world is safer this week since this nuclear capacity in Iran was destroyed to the extent it was destroyed. We're safer today. And the world is safer when America is seen as being stronger, seeing as stronger and a potential threat that Putin and Xi Jinping and everybody else are stopping and taking a step back, going, "Whoa, wait a minute." How do you feel about that, please?
Look, one, I will say there is a refreshing sense to see that the United States is not a passive actor responding to global events, but rather shaping them. The question I still have is this being elucidated as part of a broader strategy? And are there going to be the efforts to follow up, to explain why, and to get buy-in from Congress and others? Call it just old-fashioned statecraft and foreign policy making, but the country does better on these things when the president has a strategy, describes it, describes the interests, and develops a strategy of congressional support for it. It was a criticism I gave Biden repeatedly over Ukraine, and it's an outstanding question I have, even if the president has been correct, I think, in addressing the Iranian threat and making the world safer. How does this then fit into a broader plan for the Middle East? We see it in bits and strokes. Of course, normalization. He wants to end the war in Gaza as well. Normalization with Israel. We see these things. But look, it has to be explained. The trade-offs, for example, I talk to people on Capitol Hill, very happy with everything that's gone on, but they're also seeing, the president said as part of this deal, China can now buy oil from Iran again. There's a lot of hawks on the Hill who are very
Is he
unhappy
doing that
about
so
this.
China pressures Iran to keep open the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, I think, yeah, it does give China buy-in. It does give China a reason to pressure Iran to keep the straits open. But it could also just as easily, backfire where Iran says we're just going to let Chinese ships through and no one else's. That's just one of those things where, absent the explanation of it, look like it's an alternative. Again, I'm going to give the president credit where it's due. Look what you saw on NATO, where there was a clear demand to reach 5%. It was a clear challenge to Europe to do so. The interest, the reason were why, and by and large, although yes, a lot of flattery was employed, it was a successful summit there because it was clear how European defense, if not the Ukraine defense, at least European defense, benefits the United States, and that the president now felt that European countries were answering the challenge to rearm.
If you're one of those folks who would be a never Trumper and you really can't stand him, I still think you have to give the devil his due. You have to be even handed. If you liked some of the things that Joe Biden did, great. If you didn't, great. But you can't be 100% either way. There are some very clear wins here for President Trump that are the participation in NATO is a great example so that they will begin to self-fund for their own defense and not rely on us as much. I can't see anybody saying that was a negative. Okay, I have one other conspiracy theory question for you, Dan, and we've got to go. You talked about the 6 inches between the Ayatollah's ears and how important that would be ultimately to the decision-making process and reaction he ultimately has. What about the 6 inches between Donald Trump's ears? And do you think that perhaps it was strategically brilliant that someone put forward and fomented this notion of taco, that Trump always chickens out? This was started maybe a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. We started hearing taco. It's precisely the sort of thing that would have enraged President Trump, and would it have pushed him strategically to the point where he would have said, this sounds, listen to me. If the Israelis can put into effect cell phone bombs, explosive devices years in advance, and just bide their time for when they're going to have their attack, you can't think for 1 second that Netanyahu couldn't have come up with taco out of the Mossad and said, start it, get it out there on social media in the U.S. You get this guy to a point where he feels like he's got to do something to show that he's not going to be that chicken.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get too conspiracy theory. As far as I know, taco first appeared in the Financial Times. So
great, wouldn't that be a perfect place for Mossad to plant it?
You can blame them, the pink pages of the Financial Times. But look, one, you have President Trump. Look, I think the taco element there. I would also say if you followed his remarks, his speeches, his opinions, I truly believe he wants to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And he believes that by, bringing peace to the Middle East, he saw what other presidents have done historically. And he thinks that he can, with ending the Iranian nuclear program, bringing peace between Israel and his neighbors, that he could solve Ukraine. That's, I think, in his mind, what he wants to attain. All full honesty. When you think of his remarks, what he said off the cuff, what he said at rallies, it's been a focus of his.
Is the world a safer place this week, Dan?
It is for now.
I'll take that for now. Dan Mahaffee from the Dr. Scholl Foundation, thank you so much. We're going to come back with Les Munson and continue this international discussion, expanding to China, going back to Russia, Ukraine, and take a look at the international implications. Please stay with us.
Michael Farr and the FarrCast are proud to support Heroes, Inc. Heroes supports the spouses and children of law enforcement officers and firefighters who gave their lives in the line of duty to the greater Washington, D.C. community. Their singular goal is to honor the supreme sacrifice made by these individuals by caring for their families. Heroes' work begins within 24 hours of the tragic loss and continues indefinitely. We invite you to learn more about Heroes' mission at heroes.org. We hope that you will consider supporting Heroes as they endeavor to honor those who protect us. That's heroes.org. Heroes, here for you, here for good. And now, back to the FarrCast and your host, Michael Farr. Thank you for joining us on the FarrCast. And now, back to your host, Michael Farr.
Welcome back to the FarrCast. Boy, this is a good one, folks. I'm enjoying this a whole lot, and I'm learning. I loved Kenny Polcari's responses this morning, and I learned actually more than usual, which is a lot, frankly, from Mahaffee. The learning is not done. I hope for you either. Les Munson is head of the international practice at BGR Group, which is a Washington, D.C. Policy firm. We call those policy firms. It means he's a lobbyist. But this guy is dialed in and as connected as you can get. And if you want to talk about policy, for instance, in Panama, and do you remember that Panama Canal thing? Doesn't that seem like it was a long time ago? Wasn't, folks. We're talking 3 months. 3 months when we were going to go take over the ownership of the canal just so we could screw with the Chinese on that. We talked with Les about that. Les, let's welcome back first, and let's start with NATO, and then I want to go to some of the effects of what's happened in Iran and Israel.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be with you always. I think the NATO summit, shockingly positive. for President Trump if you had been kind of Rip Van Winkle for the last few years, and you woke up this week and you saw that President Trump is praising NATO and NATO is hailing his leadership, and everyone is going to spend 5% of their GDP on defense and intel and cybersecurity. The Iranians appear to be off the board as a fighting force. These are stunning developments. President Trump is riding about as high as you possibly can. For how long, we'll see. But he's in great shape this week, and he got all the accolades appropriately delivered as he likes them in The Hague, in the Netherlands, at the NATO summit this week. It's really amazing stuff.
We love Big Brother. We love Big Brother, and this is a double plus good. Definitely a double plus good as we limit language, as only Orwell brilliantly showed us how important language was. And if you think about how the language is changing in government, particularly in the U.S., double plus ungood doesn't seem that too far away. So, oh, and by the way, we're doing great on the war front. The sacrifices you're making, and there are going to need to be some more sacrifices coming up, but it's all working because the alliance and the government and Big Brother is leading us to a right, more noble place, and everything's just great. If you haven't read 1984, read it. If you haven't read it in a while, read it again. You will not sleep at night while you're reading 1984 again. I've just done it. It's terrifying. Okay, Les. NATO is a success by any measure, whether you like President Trump or you don't like President Trump. Don't you have to admit that President Trump is enjoying actual successes, not headline successes, not PR successes, not propaganda successes, but real hard currency successes?
100%. And Michael, I think it's even better than that in a weird way, because and again, all of this could change this afternoon or next week or in a month, of course. And
well, think about where we were 2 months ago, for God's sakes. We weren't anywhere near here. This is amazing.
That's correct. Things have been getting better. Liberation Day, things have gotten better after Liberation Day. But the amazing thing to me is the
I think things got better after we gave up on Liberation Day, but okay.
That's another way of putting it. I apologize for going nerd on you, foreign policy nerd on you. The noticeable thing for me is national security decision-making process here. The president has essentially gotten rid of the
national security decision-making process. Okay, yes. Go ahead now. I'm focused. I need to focus.
Study. This is a thing that if you go to the National Defense University, they'll give you a whole class on it. You talk about it for a whole semester. You go to seminar after seminar. People think deep thoughts about this stuff. President Trump has completely changed the way the U.S. government makes decisions. Got rid of the National Security Council effectively, is relying on a close coterie of advisors, Marco Rubio, a few others. He is making the decisions himself. He's the one who negotiated the deal between Iran and Israel directly himself.
Who?
President Trump.
President Trump.
This is for me, this is the most amazing part of this. We saw him go out and talk to the news pool, the pool of reporters at the White House, and drop the F-bomb this week because he was mad that his own personal diplomacy was being disregarded by what he viewed as his partners, Iran and Israel, both sides. So he dropped the F-bomb on both of them because he was personally invested. We have not seen this, I don't think, ever in our lifetimes. Maybe Richard Nixon and Kissinger were operating at this level, but this is President Trump doing it personally, making the calls, being in the moment, not relying on some 6-month study from a bunch of experts. God bless the experts. I love them. But he's not basing it on some 6-month study. He's not using talking points. He's speaking plainly. He's doing it himself. And here's the amazing part. And I can see the look on Harry's face. He's like, where is this going? It's working. As of today, this is working very well. It is a dramatic change. It is a totally different way of making decisions. It's a different way of operating. I'm not sure it's a grand strategy, but it's a different way of making decisions, and it seems to be very effective in today's environment.
And so basically you're saying that it's okay. And by the way, ignore that look on Harry's face. He always looks like that.
Okay.
Yeah, he looks at me that way all the time. Like he's talking crazy again, but 40 years, who pays attention anymore? Okay. So, Les, are you endorsing this? I mean, isolationist decision making on Trump? I mean, we've seen basically, I think Putin be accused of the same thing. He doesn't listen to his advisors. He doesn't do this and that. He does whatever the hell he wants. And somehow are we endorsing this with Trump because he's had a few successes here? Is this really a good idea? Because I think that the National Defense University would say, don't let the executive do that.
Michael, in my world, that of the folks I talk to and that I've had some sort of modest career in for the last 3 decades.
Modest career.
There are like all of these folks who have been in the White House are alarmed. All of these folks who have worked for the National Security Council, and there are very wonderful people. They see what's going on, like this can't work. This doesn't make sense. He needs to have coordination. He needs to have process. He needs to have the deep policy dive. There's a little bit of truth in all of that. Meanwhile, President Trump has completely changed the way the U.S. government operates, and it's working certainly much better than the last administration. God bless Joe Biden. But this is working much better. We are in a much better spot right now. Again, this could all change, of course, but right now you have to sit back and say, let's try to figure out how this is working. Maybe we need to kind of turn into the skid here and make this thing and kind of double down on this process, because there is effectiveness here. Our European allies are stepping up and saying the right stuff. They said the right stuff about the attack on Iran. By the way, here's another political point, Michael. The Democrats, I think, are making a big mistake. They are trying to hide behind process on this Iran strike. They're wrong. The Iran strike was the right thing to do. Yes, it would have been better if Trump had gone to Congress to ask for an authorization for the use of military force. I totally agree with that, and it would be great if he got that. But the fact that he did it, it changed the game. It's good for us. Democrats ought to say that. And I don't understand why they're kind of hiding behind this process over authorization and consultation, which voters don't really care about at the end of the day. Go out and call the win a win, and let's move on from there. I think that would be the smart thing.
I think it would be a smart thing too, but I haven't seen the Democrats do a smart thing yet. I haven't seen the Democrats really do a smart thing in the past 2 or 3 years. There is a vacuum of leadership in the Democratic Party, and while nature abhors it, I think so do the American people, and they're still not doing anything about it. And they're choosing the wrong issues. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be helpful here to my Democratic listeners out there. Show some leadership about something. You guys are going after immigration. It's the one area where Trump is really getting a lot of support if you look at all the polls. Quit attacking the stuff at which he's successful. If you want to attack him on something, go for the economy, for God's sakes. There are issues in the economy that tariffs have caused and everything else. It's an issue for you. Sorry, Republican friends, don't get pissed at me for handing them a gun. They won't take it. They've had it all along. They're not following up. Okay, I want to go back to something I talked to Kenny Polcari about, which is confirmation bias. This notion economically that Farr says we can't continue to add $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion in debt each and every year when we're already borrowing money to pay interest on the debt that we have. This doesn't work. And people are saying, oh, but there really haven't been problems in the markets making new highs. That's like the teenage boy who tells you, I drove home after having 5 beers and I didn't wreck the car and I didn't get pulled over by a cop, so it's no problem to drive after 5 beers. There is, and sooner or later the problem comes and everybody goes, well, dumbass, of course you were driving after you'd had 5 beers. Is this just confirmation bias that the Trump process is working here? We're making those economic mistakes, folks. Let me just keep that as separate. But is that we have had a couple of Trump successes validation of the Trump process of isolation? Can he continue to do this less? Or how do you, if not, how do you insert some more responsible adult supervision voices into this process?
let me say, Michael, I think it's a mixed bag for sure. And I don't actually agree with the isolationist label on Trump. He's not an isolationist. He's willing to engage in certain circumstances in ways that I think a lot of people agree with. And we could have a long conversation about what that kind of global engagement from Trump looks like. On your fiscal conservative question, I agree. Where I saw a story recently that this is outside my area of expertise, but the Social Security Trust Fund and some of these other entitlements we're looking at trouble there sooner than before, right? It's coming within less than 10 years. We're looking at a significant change in our ability to deliver on those important programs. So there needs to be reform. The good news here is, I think, and this is me seeing the glass as half full. Once we get past the one big beautiful bill process, this budget reconciliation process, which will probably be in the next week or two. Once we get beyond that, Trump's going to be in kind of, this different country. He will have achieved his major political goals with Congress, probably, and then he's going to have some more flexibility. One of the things Republican presidents do in their second term, generally speaking, is address entitlements. The table is kind of set for there to be some sort of compromise here, and maybe he can bring these fiscal conservatives closer to him and say, I'm willing to look at entitlement reform. Let's try to make it bipartisan. He's not up for reelection. He's got a little bit more freedom. There's a real need to do it, as you point out, because we can't keep borrowing money to borrow money. And so I think there's going to be an opportunity here in the next year or so to actually address these things. Whether he's able to do it successfully could be a big part of his legacy.
It'll be a great part of his legacy. Did you just suggest that in the next couple of weeks, the big, beautiful bill will pass?
I did.
Wow.
That's exactly what I did. Yes. And I think it will.
Yeah. Write that down, Harry. We'll call him. We'll call him back and make fun of him if he's wrong. But I will also sing the Hallelujah chorus myself. Actually, you don't want to hear it. If you're right about that, I guess I don't know whether I want this thing to pass or not. I'm just going to sing Hallelujah that you were right, not because I'm necessarily in favor of this bill. It perpetuates more spending that this country can't afford, and I don't understand how responsible people continue to do that without solving the hole in the bucket. Don't keep, when you're in the hole, stop digging at some point. Les, tell me about the effect of what happened in Iran on Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping.
I think it's transformative. Vladimir Putin.
No, it's transformative. That's why. That's a strong word.
Transformative. We're in a different place than we were a week ago.
Wow.
Vladimir Putin called Trump and said, "How can I help you on Iran?" Trump said, "I don't need your help on Iran. I need your help on Ukraine. Stop the war." Xi Jinping told the Iranians not to mine the Straits of Hormuz. This is a big deal. We are significantly, I would have argued, and I think there were mostly because I was listening to smart people who follow this, like Walter Russell Mead in the Wall Street Journal, free advertisement, who said we're pretty close to World War III a few months ago. I think we're much farther away now than we were a couple of months ago. The Chinese and the Russians see a U.S. willing to act in a smart way to defend its interests and to do the smart thing. And I think that changes their behavior. Granted, it'll be temporary. It's always temporary. Things always change. But right now, we're in a much better spot than we were 2-3 months ago.
And if, as political winds blow and you don't have to actually like anybody, and perhaps that world leaders who attended NATO still don't like President Trump, they've all gotten very quiet. In fact, they've gone beyond quiet to singing certain of his praises out of necessity and an obligation of respect, or what are they afraid of right now were they to push back against President Trump?
Well, they know he's unpredictable. By the way, they're calling him daddy. They're literally calling him daddy. And then he seems to like that. And he's now praising NATO. So whatever it is that they're doing is working pretty effectively. I think one of the little secrets here, Michael, is
wait a minute. They're calling him daddy.
Calling him daddy. The Mark Rutte, who's the head of NATO.
I just threw up a little in my mouth. I'm sorry. I just got to tell you, I can't. I don't care. Look,
are we going to speak
I am all about being American and patriotic, and I love I mean, that the United States looks strong now. I love all of this. Oh my God, they're calling him daddy. I can't.
This is where we are. Embrace it. What are you going to do? Fight City Hall? Here we are. And it worked. I think one of the dirty little secrets here is President Trump has become a known quantity and is predictable. European leaders have a sense of who he is and what he needs. They're delivering on it. They're getting to it.
I need to call him because I'm still baffled. Every day I wake up and read the newspapers. I mean, tell me how you see that as the president. Explain that to me. The president's predictable now. How?
They've seen him at work before. He's not fresh on the scene. They've seen this. They've seen his act, and in part, it's an act. They know what his belief structure is. They know what his triggers are. They know the things that he actually cares about and the things that he's transactional on. They've got a much better sense. They're able to engage with him in a much more pragmatic way. Frankly, it was in his first term, it was Prime Minister Abe from Japan who did the best job of engaging with him. Now it appears the Europeans may have gotten the hint. They know how to operate in his universe, and they're getting to a better place. It's good for everyone. The NATO alliance is stronger right now than it's been in years because one of the skeptics has become one of the champions, at least for now. So this is working. I'm sorry for sounding like a bit of a cheerleader here, but I think we do have to acknowledge that the stuff President Trump has been doing has been working.
The reinvigorated NATO is bad news. Is bad news for Putin, correct?
100%.
100%. Does that slow down Xi Jinping and his Taiwanese aspirations?
I think it does, and I think they see that President Trump is. There's been this. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. President Trump's not an isolationist. They have now seen that to the extent they didn't understand it from the first term. They understand it now. He's willing to make the tough decision. He's willing to violate the sensibilities of some of the people, not a lot, but some of the people in his coalition to get things done. They noticed that. They noticed that he irritated some of the people in his base, and he didn't care. And he did it anyway, and he's going to keep those people as supporters, I predict.
Les Munson is the head of international policy at the BGR Group. And now you know why, ladies and gentlemen, and now you know why. If you need to get something done with the United States government and figure out how to navigate this policy, while he's talking from a high level, he also can walk the halls of the Capitol, the Senate, and the House office buildings. You don't care about the Capitol building. You don't need your guy in the Capitol building, ladies and gentlemen. You need him in the halls of the Hart building. That's where you need him. And he knows everybody when he walks down the hall, and they all go, "Hi, Les." That's the guy. That's the guy. Okay? That's the guy. Les Munson's the guy. Thanks so much for being with us again on the FarrCast, Les.
Thanks, Michael. Always awesome to be with you.
That's it for another FarrCast, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, I think this was a really good one, Harry. I've learned so much on this one. We cover Wall Street, Washington, and the world. We did it this week. I'm so proud and grateful to all of our guests. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing us on social media. Thank you for your notes, particularly that very nice note I got saying that I wasn't overly political and that I should ignore a lot of the criticism. And they didn't really know whether I was a Republican or a Democrat, which was to my great credit. I kind of like that they couldn't tell. I like that. And I don't tell. So we'll be back next week. Do it all again. For Harry Jennings, my producer, and everybody at Farr Miller in Washington, thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back next week. Have a great weekend. See everybody. Bye.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the FarrCast. Thanks for listening, and thanks to our guests, the Kenny Polcari, Dan Mahaffee, and our special guest, Lester Munson. The FarrCast is produced by Michael Farr and Harry Jennings and comes to you weekly for free on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, TuneIn, and Apple Podcasts. Next week is 4th of July, but we are planning to record just before the holiday, so we'll be back with you next week with more insights into Wall Street, Washington, and the world. Until then, take care, stay safe, and stay healthy. I'm producer Harry Jennings, and thank you for listening to the FarrCast. Farr Miller in Washington is a group comprised of investment professionals registered with Hightower Advisors, LLC, and SEC registered investment advisor. Some Some investment professionals may also be registered with Hightower Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. All information referenced herein is from sources believed to be reliable. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC have not independently verified the accuracy or completeness of the information contained in this podcast. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates make no representations or warranties, expressed or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information or for statements or errors or omissions or results obtained from the use of this information. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC and any of its affiliates assume no liability for any action made or taken in reliance on or relating in any way to the information. This podcast and the materials contained herein were created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of the authors and do not represent those of Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates. Farr, Miller & Washington and Hightower Advisors, LLC or any of its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice. This material was not intended or written to be used or presented in any way to any entity as tax or legal advice. Clients are urged to consult their tax and or legal advisors for related questions.